Part of our people focus at Choice Bank is ensuring we are providing additional tools and resources to our business clients, which is why we developed the Taking Care of Business webinar series. We hold these series approximately once a month on various business-focused topics. Some are current events and others on evergreen topics that can serve as a reference for your business into the future. You can find an archive of these past webinars at bankwithchoice.com webinars. Today, we have Stephanie Elliston. She will speak on how to increase your understanding and empathy for the working generations. You'll learn about each generation currently in the workforce and how to leverage their communication strengths to have your messages effectively received. This webinar will help you enhance your DEI awareness, skills, and empower you to build stronger relationships with your colleagues, clients, and stakeholders. Stephanie Elliston is a certified professional coach and the owner of the Steady Elevation, where she works with businesses and individuals to elevate their potentials. Stephanie uses her tools to advance confidence toward desired outcomes. She is trained to remove the blocks and influences that prevent people or businesses from reaching their highest potential. As a reminder, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat function on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen throughout the presentation. We will take time at the end of the presentation to go through those questions. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and be sure to keep an eye out for future webinars. I will now turn things over to Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you, Pang. I'm excited to be here with Choice Bank and add to your business series webinars that you have. Thanks for everybody putting your information in the chat. I see a lot of North Dakota, even some Georgia. That's great. So if you haven't already, throw your name in there, where you're from, what business you're with, so I can get an idea of who's out there. I asked right away, are people going to have cameras on or cameras off? And my answer is very clear. Cameras are off, but that's all right. As long as you guys are enjoying the presentation, my goal might be to get Liam's low fuel to high F. We're going to fill that tank for him. All right. Welcome, Carrie. Well, and your camera on, so I just wanted to give you a little props. You guys are in for a fun session today, and talking about generations is fun. We can get a little nostalgic. I do want you to be familiar with that chat option, so if you need to warm it up now, please do, because I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to engage in this. Let's talk about what happened in history that might have impacted generations. Now, like Pang said, my name is Stephanie Elliston. I own the Steady Elevation. And what I do, or what is my goal, is anytime I do these sessions, isn't to make you a superhero of the topic that I'm speaking on, such as generations, but really just increase that dial 1 to 2% so you have a stronger self-awareness when it comes to working with diverse generations. The goal is to increase your curiosity and lower your judgment when you're working with individuals who don't think or act exactly like you. And spoiler alert, that's pretty much everybody. So you'll get something out of this session, whether it be generations or ways to effectively communicate with others. I'm going to start by telling you a story of when I started just in the industry. So I started working in HR as a recruiter. So as a recruiter, I was in charge of recruiting our customer service reps. So if you're in an industry that has those frontline employees, you might get it, that you are looking for individuals that are charismatic, inviting, engaging, influential, so that they can get our guests, our customers to come back and continue to do business with us. So when I was recruiting these individuals at this establishment, one of the last questions I would have to ask is, well, do you have any visible tattoos? I don't even know if that's even a legal question anymore. Maybe some HR professionals will let us know. But I had to ask, do you have any visible tattoos? And when I have a rock star candidate say, yeah, I have a tattoo on my wrist or something on my forearm, I would have to reject that candidate because they were required to wear a uniform that had short sleeve shirts. And at that time, the dress code didn't allow for visible tattoos and even piercings and different colored hair. It was really restrictive. So after about a half a dozen of rejecting of individuals that I thought would be quality candidates for our team, I marched into that HR director's office. This isn't even my boss. This isn't even my boss's boss. So I went way up the food chain, which I don't necessarily recommend if you work in a hierarchy system. And I demanded that we change the dress code standard. It's too restrictive. We're losing these quality applicants. I went on and on again about how I've had to reject people that definitely deserve to work here at our location. Now, it was a little bit of a blur after that. So when I get argumentative, that tends to happen. But I will tell you, it took 2 to 3 years for me and my boss to help start chipping away at that dress code so we could get those quality applicants in to work for us. Now, I tell you this story because if I had the generational knowledge or the communication techniques that I'm going to talk about today, I would have maybe had a different outcome. I would have maybe been able to shrink that 2 to 3 years to 1 years if I would have had the tools that I'm going to give you today. Now, these are just the foundational information of generation and communication, but I'm hoping there's some aha moments and even some ideas that you can go ahead and take away with you. Now, remember, it's just that 1 to 2% that we want to get better at. So let's get started. What makes a generation? All right, let me get this slideshow moving. Because we know that generations exist. Society tells us there's different generational categories. But what really makes a generation? And that is experiencing similar trends at a given time, raised with similar impacts. Now, a few things I want to share with you before I carry on. It's very important to understand that age defines a generation, not a person. And I'm going to test this out with you here in a little bit. It's also important to understand that emotional intelligence matters. When we have strong social awareness, self-awareness, we're able to communicate to other individuals more effectively. Now, when doing my research, I did find that each generation typically thinks that their work ethic or how they do things is the normal, right? So again, we're going to want to reduce that judgment and thinking that the way we do things is the way it should be done, lessen that and raise our curiosity for why people do things differently. And lastly, one of the things I want you guys to know before we go on is to understand that each generation is comprised from main elements that have shaped their values, their beliefs, their behaviors. So each generation has gone through impactful situations that have shaped them. Now, this is where we're going to start using the chat because I want to hear from you. Where do you think some generations had some impactful elements? I'm going to go first so I can give you an example. One of the ways that generations have shifted over time, an element, is parenting. All right, parenting has significantly shifted from maybe the way we were raised or how we are raising our kids right now. Back in the day, maybe there's some of you that were able to go out and play outside wherever you wanted until the streetlights came in and then you knew you had to come home. Nowadays, we're able to track little Johnny exactly where he is and have him get right on home way before it gets dark out. Parenting has shifted. I do love this fun fact. Oh, yeah, COVID. All right, Jimmy, we're going to hold off there because we're going to come to COVID. That's pretty impactful. But one of the parenting ways that I think is funny is that there was a time where at 18, you were out of the house. Oh, no, no. Parenting has made it way too comfortable in the house these days. We're staying at least until 26, right? So if you have those kids there that you're saying, okay, at 18, see you later, that might not necessarily be the case. Parenting has changed. Put in the chat, what are some other ways generations have made a shift? Enter it in there. School, right? Education, certainly. The way we shop. Does anybody go to places anymore? Amazon has made it. Marriage, gender roles, technology, single parent homes, what a nuclear family looks like. All right, exactly. Keep them coming. What else? Anyone say dance, the way people dance, fashion, so much. Sometimes when I'm in person, I'll do a Charleston. It's a very poor Charleston, but just for visual effects. Pets, that has changed. I almost want you to come off mute and tell me about that one. I've never got the pets answer, but I believe you. Social media, certainly how we communicate with others has been an impactful element in generations. Okay, I know I heard technology in there. Economics, right? How the worldly events and social media and how it impacts that. Certainly career and work. We talked about education, how that advanced, how we come to work looks significantly different than maybe when our grandparents went to work. Now, out of the 4 that I have listed here in the chat, which one of these 4 do you think is changing the fastest? I will wait. Tech. Oh, we're all right. We're a sharp group this morning. We're a sharp group. You're right. It is technology. Technology is the fastest moving element in generations that we can visibly see too. So the way we've listened to music has significantly changed. How we watch movies and TV. I was around, and maybe there's some of you that when you had to do Netflix, you had to send it out and it got mailed to you. It wasn't a streaming service. It was such a small time that I almost forgot about how we originally started with Netflix. How we use a phone. We've seen advancements through there. If you're thirsty for more generational information after this session, there is a fun YouTube video where some parents give maybe Generation Z a phone number and they have to call it using a rotary phone. I will tell you, it's a lengthy video because it takes them a while to figure it out, but it is comical. If you know how to use a rotary phone, you could see why it maybe be a little bit more difficult. But we've seen these advancements with technology, maybe with our own eyes. And certainly the traditionalist, which is where I'm going to start with in the generational timeline, has seen these changes and advancements come on. Now, there are a few traditionalists still in the workforce today. All right, there are a few scattered in there, mostly have retired and moved on to a retirement phase. These individuals, what I want to explain to them, they're very rooted in their country, in their loyalty to work, in their loyalty to family. This might look like your parents. This could look like your grandparents. Okay, these individuals were really impacted by the wars, the World War I, II, Korean War. At that time, it was a lot of drafting. They wanted to serve the country. Now, traditionalists typically might be between the years of 1928 and 1946. Now, before I go on more with the generational timeline, I do want to say, when we're looking at those years, I want you guys to remember the individual needs to be impacted by those events. So it's not necessarily because they were born in those years. They need to be old enough to see what is happening and being able to figure out how that shapes their beliefs or their behaviors or their values. And also, before I go on, these dates, if I don't exactly align with the generation you typically associate yourself with, don't worry. All right, we'll talk about that in a little bit. The years are not really regulated. It's just dependent on my research. Okay, so I don't want anyone to freak out. Sometimes I'd be like, I'm not a baby boomer. I'm a Gen X. It's okay, everybody. Hang on. You can identify with whatever generation you want. But let's carry on with baby boomers. These baby boomers are currently retired and also leaving the workforce right now. There's significant population of baby boomers still in the workforce. But what baby boomers do is they have the strong work ethic. Baby boomers invented the 50-hour week. Thank you very much, baby boomers. All right, they love to be that first in the office, last to leave. They value respect and tradition. They want to respect that the way that they've done things, their life experiences are considered. So now this HR director that I told you about in the beginning, she was an established HR director on the brinks of retirement. So going into her office demanding that we change the way we do things might not have been so effective if I would have known that baby boomers really appreciate that opportunity to understand their experience and why things have been done the way they've been done. Now, the baby boomers are also impacted by civil rights movements, okay, space travel. Feel free to add in the chat anything that a baby boomer might have been impacted by. We have Elvis, the Beatles. Elvis, you'll find that each generation had this rebellious phase, and Elvis really helped impact that. What are some other things that might have impacted the baby boomers? If I have you baby boomers in here, go ahead and write it in the chat. Also, small disclaimer, outside my window, we're having a significant storm. If there's any sort of IT issues, ping, please let me know. Go ahead and message me in the chat or pause me if I'm being disrupted by that. All right, any baby boomers got some other ideas? We're gonna move on then, okay? Because we've got Generation X here. Maybe I have some Generation X out here in the office. Vietnam, you bet, war, baby boomers. They also had war. They saw their parents go, and now we had Vietnam War. You're right. Gen Xers, they like challenge and growth. All right, maybe you see them in your office. They're those individuals that are going to volunteer for those projects, initiatives that are in the workplace. They grew up with more parents in the workforce. So I saw like single parent home, just even what a nuclear family, what a family dynamic looked like. Generation X had to go with the idea that most of their parents were going to be at work. They were called the latchkey kids. All right, if you're not familiar with the latchkey kid definition or that quote or that term is, it's meaning that these individuals, Generation X, had to go home after school, let themselves in and make their own snack or watch their own TV. They didn't necessarily have that parental figure at home when they got there that maybe we see today or in the years before them. So they value shared responsibility. Generation X would love for some support and some help because they're going to take it on because that's what they've known to do. So when you're working with a Gen Xer, maybe think about how you can help them because they're going to take it on and be more specific. Say, can I help you with the email distribution? Can I help you with this specific area in a project? Because they're going to appreciate that more and be able to delegate more when you have that specific task. Because again, Generation X, they're having that shared responsibility. Right now, it's 47% of them are taking care of an older generation parent and a younger child. 15% of them are financially supporting an aging parent and a younger child. So having that help and support is going to be well received by a Generation X. Now, this group here, they are impacted by the rise of the computer. Political scandal happened there. All right, and you think it just happens in our age. It didn't. Watergate happened for them at that time. They had MTV. They had the rebel phase of Saturday Night Live, which had controversial jokes. If I have some Generation X out there, what are some other things that might have impacted their values, beliefs, or behaviors in that time frame? Go ahead and add some to the chat. I love the MTV, you guys. I'm not a Generation X, but I did partake in that MTV time. Punk phase, right? It was a moment. All right, you can still add those to the chat if you think of some that impacted that Generation X. But let's talk about millennials because they're here. They're in the workforce. They like to be heard and they want to give their feedback. Now, I probably just walked right into that HR director's office with millennial just right on my forehead because I just busted in there. I said, I have new ways of doing things, something that you have always done was not received well. Okay, and I typically, when I have conversations about generations, I hear this phrase, they're entitled. And I want to discourage from saying that because they just have ideas and new ways of doing things. And how do we talk with them and manage those ideas and those thoughts? They like the value of freedom and flexibility when also having the support from team. So you might see their work environment starting to shift or trying to push the buttons on what work environments might look like. Millennials value self-expression. 40% of them have tattoos or some sort of visible expression from them. 70% of them have social media accounts. Now, if I would have known 40% of millennials, which was coming into the workforce at that time, have tattoos, I would know, hey, we're blocking off a large population here of quality applicants because majority of them are going to have tattoos. They want to express themselves. So they really pushed it with that. When working with a millennial, you are going to want to get buy-in from them and get their ideas in that brainstorming phase. And instead of waiting until ideas have been formed, just telling them what to do, most of the time we're wanting to work with the millennial, talking with them and not necessarily at them. Now, millennials, they have been impacted by digital media. That's really been on the rise while they were growing up. 9/11 is actually the most impactful across all generations. So if you were born and were able to understand what was happening at that time, that is the most impactful event, regardless of what generation that you were in. Okay, and my study and my research was done before COVID, so that certainly could be challenged with the pandemic that recently happened. What other impacts might millennials have that have shaped their values or beliefs? Oh, we had housing. Oh, yeah. 08. 2008 certainly was impactful, right? And that again, that's probably one for a lot of the generations, regardless of which one you were in, as long as you were able to understand that. I know the Obama, voting in Obama was impactful. You know, even sad situations such as Columbine and the rise of what schooling looks like. I know schooling has changed and what that, oh gosh, I just got chills. The last one, Lisa Jacob Wetterling, us Minnesota people know that one. Just the schools and what a school looked like, the safety of schools. Jacob Wetterling, I was never allowed to sleep over anyone's house when I was growing up due to some of those scary, scary situations. Hurricane, oh, do I have a lot of millennials in here? This is flowing. OJ Simpson. I think my class stopped and actually listened to the verdict. I don't remember, maybe seventh grade. Yeah, 9/11, you bet. Oklahoma bombing, right? A lot of fear tactics and media really ramped up too. We were able to see more of these sad situations versus maybe traditionalists who lived by a radio and the TV was just starting to form. Okay, I'm 96, so barely a millennial. All right, well then hold on, Jimmy, because I'm getting into it. I'm getting into Gen Z. So what a great transition you just brought me into. Now, Gen Z, they're here. They're also in the workforce. And they liked that up to speed technology. They don't have a choice. They were born into fast-paced technology, multiple ways to get communication and systems to work. So when working with them, maybe making communication bite-sized and fun. Now, I've already seen this in advertisements, how advertisements have just switched and marketing has switched over to market that more bite-sized, fun, capturing communication. They like that direct and entertaining perspective. And now Generation Z is flipping it a little bit when it comes to interviewing candidates. So if I have any recruiters, like my past position, they're wanting to interview organizations just as much as organizations are trying to interview the employee. Maybe you've seen that. They want to work with organizations where they can align with that culture, or they're making an impact in the society, right? And having a social impact there. Now, Generation Z, they're still being influenced, right? I told you that you have to be old enough age to still understand the impact to shape your behaviors, beliefs, and values. But they got hit with COVID, right? That pandemic. It'll be very interesting to see as they grow up how much that's impact them. Virtual technology, climate change has been impactful for Generation Z. All right, I know Generation Z's in here. What else? What else has shaped? There's been a flip from the boomers. Okay, it was life was before work. And are you saying millennials are now switching it? Okay. We're saying, and for people that are watching this recording, I'm reading off the chat, is that boomers had work before life and now millennials are switching it. Right. They're wanting those experiences. They're seeing those grandparents in their final days saying, go have adventures. Don't just sit behind that assembly line. They're seeing this older generation not have these experiences that we're able to have in this day. Family first. Okay. Family first is in this generation, right? We're seeing that in the workforce. I do a presentation on empathy for leaders to understand if we start to pay attention to people's families and their personal lives, even just that little ounce of empathy can go far in creating some engagement and retention. Political impacts, certainly we're headed into that season. AI, I know, ChatGPT, it's something else. All right. Now, you might have already put yourself into a box of which generation you're in, but I'm going to try to shake that up here a little bit. I'm going to give you 2 questions, really brief, informal survey. I'm going to have you put your answers in the chat, all right? Because I want to see which generation you might be most relatable to. All right. There are no wrong answers. Here we go. First question, everybody. What type of reward motivates you the most? Think of that carrot dangling in front of you. Is it A, flexibility? I need some movement in my schedule. Is it B, vacation? Something to look forward to, wanting to make sure you have a lot of PTO hours when you're interviewing for that organization. An advanced title. Oh, I love Sunny's like, I read no more. I have A. Are you D, bonus? Or E, private recognition? I will allow 2 answers, but do not do F, all of the above. go ahead, add it in your chat. And if you're watching this recording, write it down. Oh, I'm getting a lot of A's. I'm getting a lot of A's. Flexibility is important. Keep it coming. All right. Next question. And if you missed that one, don't worry, I'm gonna show it again. What is important to you at work? Is it A, making an impact in society? Maybe it's B, working with bright and creative people. You want that surrounding. Maybe you're C, being valued and needed is important for you at work. Or D, you want to work for a forward-thinking company. And E, excuse me, is having clear rules and policies. Go ahead and put it in the chat. I've seen a lot of ABCs, ABCs. Same thing with you watching this recording. Go ahead and write it down. ABCs. You know, Payne, did I miss any? Did I get any D's or E's in here in this one? Go through this chat here a little bit. Oh no, you guys are staying at the top.
No D's or E's.
No D's or E's. Okay. Forward-thinking company, having clear rules or policies. Okay. Okay, here's the questions again in case you missed it. Certainly continue to put your answers in the chat. Now, if you answered A, which a lot of you did, you might be connected with a more typical response of a Generation Z. Now, a lot of you answered B as well for either one of those questions. If you answered B for either one of those, you might have some similar preference as a millennial. I saw some C's. And you might have a connection to the baby boomers. You might have more relatability to them than you think if you are not a baby boomer. And then D is those Generation X. You could have some connection. I didn't see a lot of D's. And E's, I don't even know if there was any E's, could be related to a traditionalist. Now, I know that they're out there. My husband, who is a millennial, is very much a traditionalist, that loyalty, that yes, ma'am, no, sir kind of attitude. All right. Okay. Now, did anybody here answer only in their generational category? You can go ahead and just, use your reactions, raise your hand. Or did you bounce outside of your typical generation? Can't see anything. Okay. So no, okay, Lisa's no. She's outside. And this is a good example. And these are just two questions of not to get stuck in that generational box, to making sure that we're identifying everybody as an individual. So when I hear these conversations of, oh, those Gen Xers are really shaking up the workforce, well, it's not every Gen Xer. And also you might have things in common with them. So let's start bridging those gaps with potential individuals who might not be in our same age demographic and figure out that there's probably some level of relatability or connection. Now, I want to ask you again, we're using that chat. You guys are doing awesome in there. I want you to chat in why having a multi-generational workforce would have value. Why understanding the multiple generations in your business could be impactful. Why? Why bother? Let's just all have the same generation in there. What would that do for your organization? Multi-approach to culture. Yeah, different ways to see culture, different perspectives, right? Let's get a different view. You guys all didn't answer A. You all didn't answer B. There was a lot of you that answered A though. But different varieties, growth, bring a value of perspectives, new approaches to move forward. Right. And what does this look like if you have an organization that has customers? When you come in and you see only a specific generation in there, you might not have that sense of belonging. Even that optic look is helpful in a business just to provide change, new perspectives. Now, I want you to think of this. If you're that individual that is really resistant to somebody saying we've always done it this way, or maybe you're resistant to that person saying, we need new ideas here, that maybe there is this middle ground, and let's start to bridge that. Understanding the dynamic of the customers, Lisa, exactly what I was talking about. That's great. And I want you to keep that generational knowledge and that purpose of why it's important to have a variety of generations in the workforce in your head. We've already started to put the tools in here to connect with different generations, to break down some of those judgments and increase that curiosity with different generations. And now I want to add some effective communication techniques. Now, these communication techniques could be applied to everybody, but specifically, let's think about some of those different generations that we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not even going to limit you to work. Let's think in our personal life too, if we're having some disconnect with different generations. And the first one I want to talk about is avoiding communication. Now, it's not going to be new news to you that we're going to see the world differently. Everybody has a different lens on how they see different perspectives. So I'm not going to say that there is one culprit generationally that has contributed to miscommunication. But I will talk about a time historically that miscommunication certainly shifted. And that was in the early 90s when text messaging started. Now, this isn't the appropriate description or icon of what the first cell phone looked like. But when text messaging started in the 90s, it was really restrictive. It took a lot of effort. If we wanted just to even write the letter C, we had to press the 2 3 times. I don't know if anybody else remembers that. It was a test of the patience. And to get the cursor to go to the next one, you had to sit there and wait. Otherwise, you just messed the whole text up. Nobody ever wrote Stephanie. I always got just the S. Right? It was really restrictive, but it was the way communication was moving. All right. And when we were going into a text world, it had less human to human interaction, less voice to voice interaction. And can we say when we have less human and voice interaction, we have the ability to dull our social skills? The opportunity for miscommunication certainly can happen. So the ability for us to avoid miscommunication, one simple way that we can start to eliminate it is talk more. Talking more to individuals, being here and sharing some information with you just visually versus me writing a blog about it is going to be helpful for you not to misinterpret some information that I'm saying. Now, when I'm saying talk more, I'm really saying communicate your message. Now, you might be thinking in here, well, Stephanie, duh, which is a very millennial term. Thank you, Bart Simpson. Communicate your message. Well, of course, that's a way to effectively communicate. I don't need to take a class or a webinar for that. But when we talk and communicate to each other, that is only 7% of how our message is received. 7%. And we're relying on texting and email as maybe our primary communication, chat functions. Maybe you're an organization using Slack. You got to hope that 7% really lands. Right? So, because that is the effectiveness of your message. 38% is going to be your vocal, your tones, your pitch, your speed, how you're talking to someone. Understand the delivery of your message is going to take up 38%. All right, in the chat, what is the top way our message is received? How we communicate our message. What is the top way? Visuals, nonverbal. Body language, yes. Again, agreed. Sharp group. If you were watching this recording, I bet you were saying it as well. Our visual, our body language takes up 55% of how our message is received. What would this webinar look like if I had my camera off? You'd be missing a lot of my hand gestures. I'm a very hand gesture individual. A lot of my facial expressions, the approachability that you might have to write in the chat and engage with me and engage with the questions. It's very valuable. And again, when we are moving towards a text, a chat, an email world, if that is within your organization, we're missing about 93% of a communication. We need to bridge that gap somehow. I don't know if you've ever gotten a text message in all caps and you're like, are you screaming at me? Are you yelling at me? Are you excited? Not really necessarily sure. So that's when we started to invent the GIFs. I think that's what they're GIFs, right? To add that tone and to understand what my face might look like, what my tone might be, even those GIFs, right? If I just told you, oh, I got an 11-piece chicken McNugget, okay. But if I give you this and I've got an 11-piece chicken nugget, you know how excited I am. We're trying to bridge that gap. I don't know if it's that full 93%, but it was starting to help. And regardless of what generation, especially during COVID and the pandemic, like you said in the chat, people started moving towards more visual options to get that face-to-face contact and more of those vocals. So the Snapchats, social media videos, Zoom, FaceTime started to become more popular across generations. Now I'm not going to say every generation embraced it, but a lot of them started to, even if it wasn't typically in their wheelhouse. I'll have FaceTime conversations with my grandma where I only see, from her eyebrows up, but it counts. It counts, grandma. It's important to have that. So understanding the 3 V's, our vocal, our verbiage, and our visuals, very valuable when we're trying to communicate our message. And let's talk about understanding our audience. And when I say understanding our audience, talking about where they like to communicate and what platform they typically will communicate with. This is such a fun conversation because I usually can get some pushback, and that's okay. You know you best, especially if you're in a specific generation and you have family members that are in a specific generation. But I'm going to quiz you out here a little bit. When it comes to where we like to communicate, let's start with the baby boomers. Out of these options here, what are their top 2 ways on how they like to communicate? Again, if you're watching this recording, okay, we got face-to-face phone, face-to-face phone. You guys, I mean, you should teach this class. If my tech goes, someone in here can certainly teach it because you are right. Baby boomers are face-to-face and phone. Again, the baby boomers are going to prefer those 3 V's, the visual, vocal, and the verbal. They want to see you, and they will settle for the phone if necessary. Also, here's a fun fact. I've seen a video where older generations, when you do a hand gesture with a phone, this indicates that I'm an older individual. But if I do this, like hold like an iPhone, that's a younger generation. So there you go. I just gave you a clue of what generation I'm in. The phone is helpful for the baby boomers. All right. Okay, Carrie went with phone and email. That certainly could be the case. I've seen a lot of baby boomers prefer email too, because especially the younger ones grew up in that email phase. Let's talk about Generation X. What are their 2 favorites? Phone, email, yeah. Phone, email. I have a cousin and we were signing up for gymnastics and I wasn't really understanding the gymnastics like website, and she's a generational X, and within 5 minutes she's like, I just called, we've got it all straightened out. I would have sat there for a while trying to figure things out, because you are right. They want that quick response. Remember, they have a lot of shared responsibility. They're taking care of a lot of things. Let's just cut to the chase. Let's get to the phone. And I see Heather too at the end wrote email. They did grow up in that email era, that AOL, when the rise of the computer happened. So they will prefer an email as well as their communication technique. Okay, you guys are hot here. You've gotten all the answers correct. Let's talk millennials. What do us millennials that do this phone gesture like? Oh, you guys, have you taken this session with me before? Chat. You are right. It is chat. Millennials prefer the chat method. Actually, out of all of the generations, they choose chat as one of their top 3. The other ones don't even choose it as one of their top 3. All right, which is actually surprising, you would think, for the younger generation. Chat, email, chat. You are correct with chat. Their second option is video calls, but without the camera. Okay, so for all of you without your camera, you could possibly fall in that millennial category. Remember, we're not in that box. We took the quiz that defined that for us. All right, those are our millennials. Okay, let's talk Generation Z. Where are they? This is where I might get you. This is where I might get the group. Where are Generation Z? Phone and video call. Okay, video. All right, we're gonna say video. We already know that. Snapchat, I know it's not an option on your list, but yes, any sort of video, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram videos. Yes. Video calls pointed out. Video calls with the video pointed at the ceiling. Oh, yeah, they don't want their video faces on there either. All right, video calls is one. You guys didn't say the second one. And I know this is going to come as a shock. This is where I get that controversy, is they like the face-to-face. This might be something from COVID where they had to sit in COVID. And so now they like getting back in interacting with people face to face. But they're saying the difference between a Generation Z and a baby boomer is really technology. So don't be surprised when those Generation Zs don't want to necessarily come to work. They still like that face to face. Apply some opportunities. I'll bet they'll show up. Okay, now just for fun, I added a blank slide here because I thought this would be a good group. Now I'm going to trick you because the image isn't even on here. You're going to have to come up with it by yourself. How about a traditionalist? What are their favorite ways to communicate? There's two. One of them's up here. One of them is not. I'm going to get you here. People, what? Jane's got it. Jane's got you guys sending mail. Who gets cards from their grandparents still? Letters. They like the mail. Grandma, I'm gonna be 42. You no longer have to send me a birthday card, but I appreciate it. Yes. All right. Me. Okay, you love the mail too. It's not a bill. You do get excited about that. So they choose face-to-face and the mail. You guys are on it. All right. Now, one of the last ways I'm going to talk about how we talk and being effective in our communication is being aware of our style. All right, so I'm not saying your style like your fashion style. So if you're still wearing those Jabot jeans and part your hair to the side, you're all right. Stay you. But I'm talking about your communication style. How do you come across to other individuals? If I were to hold a communication mirror up to you, what would be reflected back? So I work with individuals and businesses mostly on a communication assessment and facilitation. It's called a DISC, an insight assessment, where I can really hone in on your communication skills, your strengths, your blind sight, how effective you can be. And I want to give you a snapshot here right now of some of those categories. Now, I'm not going to give you all the descriptive words that could be applied to you in your communication style, but I really do want you to think and get true to yourself is that if a trusted friend or a coworker was standing in front of you saying, this is how you come across, what would they say? Would they say that you're intense, maybe direct, assertive? I know I certainly was when I went into that HR director's office demanding change. Didn't go well. Maybe you're coming off across enthusiastic, charming, confident. If I'm holding that mirror up to you, is it showing that you're calm, relaxed, composed? Or maybe if someone were to describe you, they say you're systematic, really into the details. You're focused when you're talking to me. You're very tactful in your words. Now, again, these aren't all the descriptive words, and maybe you're seeing one that applies to you, or maybe you're seeing one from each category. But if I was holding the mirror up to you, use the chat and tell me how you would describe your typical delivery. And if you're thinking, well, Stephanie, it depends on who I'm talking to, that's a great observation. And I want you to be aware of that. The way I deliver news to my 6-year-old might be significantly different than how I deliver news to a webinar. How is it that what is the word that would describe you and how you frequently communicate? Go ahead, add it in the chat. And if you're watching from the recording, go ahead and think to yourself, what is a way, okay, charming. What is a way that you typically would deliver information? This is really good insight and self-awareness. If you are a leader and you're saying, hey, my message isn't getting across, what is your delivery? Individualized, individualized. Are we a strength finder? Are you an individualized strength? Enthusiastic, right? Okay, I get it. I'm a woo, which was obvious here. Okay, enthusiastic. Okay, I love exclamation points. I know, Abby, me too. Me too. I can't use enough. I actually have to go back and delete them. Okay, direct. Okay, I think it was Stephanie, right? Stephanie Madsen. You come across as direct, and that sometimes is appropriate. Okay, same thing with enthusiastic. Maybe you need to understand how to adjust it. And that's what's important here in this portion of this effective communication, because it's one thing to understand how you communicate, how you deliver the information, and it's another to adjust it to the individual that you're talking to. We're wanting to treat everybody as an individual, and we have to be willing to change that dial a little bit when we're talking to another individual that might not receive the information as effectively as we typically deliver it. And what I mean by that, say I was a eager, sarcastic, enthusiastic millennial, and I use Slack or chat to message my baby boomer coworker. my message might not be as effective, or it might not be received as well as I'm intending. I might have to make some adjustments there, right? I'm not telling you don't be who you are, but maybe just some slight adjustments so that your message can get received effectively how you want it to be received. Now, there might have been some of you here that have traveled to a foreign country, maybe a foreign country that doesn't speak your native language. And when you're there, unless you did the Rosetta Stone in the plane and really have a good retention, you don't know the language. So you're adding a few bonjours or gracias or queso into your English so that your message can be received, so you can get the outcome that you're looking for. Same thing when we're interacting with people at work or in our personal lives. Is there a way that we can adjust to their style, to their communication techniques, so our message can be received like we want it to be? Okay, enough about talking, a way of communication. Now it's about listening, because listening is a large part of communication. I've worked with organizations that do engagement surveys. Maybe your organization does one of them as well. And one of the lower scores is communication. It's kind of a consistent pattern. It's always communication. We always can be better on communicating. So when I sit in these solution meetings, how are we going to fix this? I hear a lot of, we'll send more emails. We will create more bulletin boards, finding different ways to communicate their message. And less frequently, I will hear, well, how are we able to listen to our employees? How can we hear them? Because we know those millennials, we like to be heard. So either you're going to give us a platform or we're just going to march into your office. I'm just kidding. Don't march into anybody's office. But understanding listening is an important way of having effective communication across different generations. Now, maybe you even heard of someone saying, I really want to be a better listener. Or maybe that's you yourself saying, oh, I wish I was a better listener. Well, something also that I like to do in my company is I take big topics such as stress or change in listening, and I break it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down different ways that you can improve your listening. So you don't just say, I'm going to listen better. I'm going to give you a focused goal for you to listen better. And you're going to apply this today, maybe this week, maybe this month, maybe this is something that you can make a habit. But what is one way that you can be a better listener today? Maybe that looks like you're going to reflect and ask questions. You're going to reflect what that individual says and then ask them questions to get a bit more understanding, maybe to help them get to the outcome that they're looking for. That's going to be a way that you're going to be more of an active listener. Maybe you're going to work on your empathizing skills. You're going to put yourself in their shoes, really understand the situation that they're in. Okay, when you're trying to listen, you're going to empathize. This morning, I had the situation where I was stressed out about parenting thing. My husband's like, are you stressed? And I was like, yeah. And his response was, okay, all right, we're going to talk about that later. But I wanted him to empathize with me. That would have been a great way of listening. He just said, okay, all right. How can we empathize more? Maybe that's part of your active listening. Maybe taking notes. I don't know about you, but when in a meeting, it's helpful to take notes when I'm listening. It helps me retain information. Maybe you're taking notes in this webinar. When you're listening, you have to take notes, one, so you can listen and retain the information. Maybe you're going to leave today's session with your active listening goal and be taking notes. What about remember? Oh, so often we forget. There's so much going on in our heads. My active listening goal is remember. And I don't think I'm alone here when someone says their name to me, and within 5 seconds, I can forget that name. The more unique it is, the faster it leaves. I want to be able to remember people's names. It's really important when I'm engaging with individuals. So how can I remember more? Maybe that is an active listening goal you want to take away with you today. Affirming, getting someone to validate you. How valuable that is when someone's listening and say, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. That makes sense. Even you're right? It shoots that dopamine up. We're feeling heard. We're feeling listened to. And maybe that's something you can do for another individual. You're going to walk out of here with your goal being affirmed. Maybe your active listening goal is focusing. You want to shove away the distractions, move the computer away, stop what you're doing, and you are going to make eye contact and focus on the person that is talking to you. Could that be your active listening goal today? Or lastly, clarifying. Now, this one I talk to individuals can be tricky because sometimes when you clarify information, it can be perceived as challenging. When I clarify something and maybe even it sounds like I'm poking holes in it, but I'm really just wanting to get on the same page. And maybe that's what you're wanting to do when you listen to someone. You just want to get on the same page. So maybe your goal here is going to be clarify. Now, again, the goal here today is just to get 1% better at our communication, specifically when it comes to generation or anybody that might be different than us. What is one way that you can leave here with a higher level of listening skills? Choose one of the goals. Watching the recording, write it down. How are you going to be a better listener? I'm going to focus. Clarify. Okay, clarify. Lots of clarifying. Great. I want to get on the same page as you. Let's make sure we're aligned. That's great. All right, clarifying across the board, focusing. So often I will be doing something at the same time I'm trying to listen. That's not effective. I can easily adjust that. That's that 1% we can do. All right, keep thinking about what that active listening goal is as we kind of round out here today. I do want to thank everybody for being here. Before I do, I did give you 5 effective ways to communicate because I know our brain really only holds on to 3. So maybe there's some 3 aha moments or reminders that you grab today that you're going to use and apply when you're working with different generations and really when we're working with individuals that are different than us. So the best advice that you can take away here is understanding everybody's individual. We want to treat them that way. But what we can do with the knowledge that we're stored here from this hour that we've spent together is understanding that we need to talk more. Get out there, talk to individuals, understanding what they're saying to avoid that miscommunication. Make those adjustments. Have that strong self-awareness that we know what our delivery is. Do we need to adjust it, like in that foreign country, adding in some different words so that our messages are received? Knowing that we need those 3 V's, the verbals, the vocals, the visuals. If your message isn't getting received, which one of those is missing? Is your body language not aligned with what you're saying? Maybe the tone isn't applying. That delivery, high self-awareness. And lastly, although I said talk more, you also got to balance out with listening more. A large part of communication is just shutting our mouth and listening to the other individual, especially when we want to get curious about diverse generations or individuals. And then understanding our audience. Who are we talking to? What area do they like to be talked to? How can I deliver my message to them? Choice Bank and participants, I'm so happy to be here. It is such a fun topic to talk about with generations. Now, I told you about that rotary phone video. If you need some more information, one of my favorite books, I have to give a shout out because a lot of my research here is The Generational Myth by Bobby Duffy. When you're born matters less than you think. And we took that quiz to say, hey, we're outside of our generation. It's a great one to look into. All right, I'm going to open the floor to see if there was any questions. Again, my email's there. Feel free. I love to have conversations, and I will even open the doors to like different debates and conversations. I'm open to all of those talks because it helps me learn more and increase that curiosity. All right.
Don't have any questions in the chat, but we'll give it a couple more minutes if anybody wants to jot down any questions you have for Stephanie. Or if you want to unmute yourself, feel free to.
It was a pleasure. This was a very engaging chat group, so I want to thank everybody for doing that. Sometimes I don't know what's gonna come with the chat, and you guys were very vocal. So if you're watching this recording, I try to answer and relay the chat as much as possible for you as well. All right.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That was fun.
I agree. Yeah, there still isn't any questions, so I think we are good to go. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for being with our Taking Care of Business educational series today. As we continue to plan for future webinars, we want to make sure we are covering topics that are valuable to all of you. So if there's ever a specific topic that you would like us to cover, please reach out to our marketing team at marketing@bankwithchoice.com. You will also be receiving an email later today with the recording of today's session. Thank you again for coming and have a wonderful day. And we look forward to you joining us again for another future webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.